When Marcus told me we had new neighbors moving in next door, I felt a flutter of excitement. After 3 years in our quiet suburban home, the house beside us had remained empty, its windows dark and lawn overgrown. The prospect of finally having someone to wave to over the fence, maybe share a cup of coffee with, seemed like a small but meaningful change. "She seems nice," Marcus said, setting down his coffee cup. "I helped her carry in a few boxes yesterday while you were at work. Single woman, probably in her 40s. Very polite." I smiled, already imagining the possibilities. Perhaps we'd become friends. Maybe she'd join our weekend barbecues or our monthly book club meetings in the living room. The first time I saw Elena Voss, she was standing in her backyard, perfectly still, staring at our kitchen window. When I waved, she raised her hand in return, but something about the gesture felt mechanical, rehearsed. She was exactly as Marcus had described, a woman in her 40s with dark hair pulled back severely, wearing a simple gray cardigan that seemed too heavy for the warm September weather. "Welcome to the neighborhood," I called over the fence that weekend, carrying a plate of homemade cookies. "I'm Sarah." "Elena," she replied, accepting the plate with both hands. Her fingers were cold when they briefly touched mine. "How thoughtful. Marcus mentioned you were very domestic." The pause before the word made something twist in my stomach, though I couldn't say why. It was a compliment, wasn't it? "Well, I hope we can be good neighbors," I said. "Oh, I'm sure we will be." Her smile was warm, but her eyes remained fixed on me with an intensity that made me want to step back. Very good neighbors indeed. That first week passed quietly. Elena kept to herself, though I noticed she had a habit of being in her yard whenever I came home from work. She'd look up from whatever she was doing, watering plants, checking her mailbox, sitting on her porch with a book, and wave. Always the same mechanical gesture. "She's friendly enough," I told Marcus when he asked how I was getting along with her. "Maybe a little intense? But in a good way, I think." Marcus nodded absently, scrolling through his phone. "She asked about your schedule yesterday. What time you usually get home, whether you work late often. I think she's hoping to catch you for a proper chat." Something about that sat strangely with me, but I pushed the feeling aside. New neighbors were naturally curious about routines, weren't they? The first real conversation happened the following Tuesday. I was struggling with grocery bags when Elena appeared at my side as if from nowhere. "Let me help," she said, already reaching for the heaviest bag before I could protest. "Thank you, but I can manage." "Nonsense. We're neighbors now." Her grip on the bag was firm, insistent. "Besides, it gives us a chance to talk." We walked up my driveway together, Elena's eyes scanning everything, the flowers I'd planted by the front steps, the small decorative wind chimes, the way I'd arranged the patio furniture. "You have such a lovely home," she said, but her tone suggested she was cataloging rather than complimenting. "Marcus is lucky to have someone who takes such care of things." "We both take care of it," I said, fumbling with my keys. "It's our home together." "Of course." Elena set the bag down carefully. "Though I imagine you do most of the day-to-day maintenance. The cleaning, the decorating, the cooking. Am I right?" I paused with the key halfway to the lock. "We share responsibilities." Elena's smile was knowing. "Marcus mentioned you're quite the cook. He raved about your lasagna." When had Marcus and Elena talked about my cooking? The conversation felt like it was happening around me rather than with me. "Would you like to come in for coffee?" I asked, partly out of politeness and partly because I wanted to understand this woman better. "I'd love to." Elena moved through my house like she was conducting an inspection. Her eyes lingered on everything: the family photos on the mantel, the stack of magazines on the coffee table, the way I'd arranged the throw pillows on the couch. She ran her fingers along surfaces as we passed, not quite touching but close enough that I could see her evaluating the cleanliness, the organization, the choices I'd made. "You have wonderful taste," she said, settling into the armchair that had the best view of both the kitchen and the living room. "Very traditional." There was that pause again, that weight behind her words that made traditional sound like something I should apologize for. I busied myself making coffee, trying to shake off the discomfort. When I returned with 2 mugs, Elena was studying our wedding photo on the side table. "Beautiful ceremony," she said without looking up. "Marcus looks so young. How long ago was this?" 5 years this December. Still in the honeymoon phase, then. Elena accepted her coffee and settled back in the chair like she belonged there. "Though I suppose all marriages go through changes. People grow. Sometimes in different directions." I sat across from her, cradling my mug. "We're very happy. I'm sure you are." Elena's smile was gentle, almost maternal. "Marcus certainly speaks highly of you. Though he did mention that you've been having some adjustments lately." My coffee suddenly tasted bitter. Adjustments? Oh, nothing serious. Just the usual things couples face. Different perspectives on the future, different ideas about what they want from life. He's very understanding, though. Very patient. Each word felt like a small stone being placed on my chest. When had Marcus shared these things with Elena? What conversations had they been having while I was at work? "I think there might be some misunderstanding," I said carefully. "Marcus and I communicate very well about our future." "Of course you do." Elena leaned forward slightly. "I just meant that sometimes it's helpful to have an outside perspective. Someone who can see things clearly, without all the emotional complications that come with being too close to a situation." She stayed for another hour, asking gentle questions about my job, my family, my hobbies. Each question felt innocent enough on its own, but together they created a picture I didn't like: a woman who was dissatisfied, unfulfilled, perhaps not the partner Marcus deserved. After Elena left, I found myself walking through my house, seeing it through her eyes. The traditional decorating choices suddenly seemed dated. The family photos looked staged. Even the way I'd organized the bookshelves seemed to suggest someone who was trying too hard to create a perfect life. When Marcus came home that evening, I watched him carefully, looking for signs of the dissatisfaction Elena had hinted at. Did he seem distant when he kissed me hello? Was there something strained about his smile? "How was your day?" I asked. "Fine. Busy." He was already heading toward the bathroom to wash up. "Elena mentioned she stopped by. That was nice of you to invite her in. When did you talk to Elena?" Marcus paused at the bathroom doorway. "She was getting her mail when I pulled in. We chatted for a few minutes." He shrugged. "She's easy to talk to." That night, I lay awake listening to Marcus sleep, Elena's words echoing in my mind. Different perspectives on the future. Different ideas about what they want from life. He's very understanding. Very patient. The conversations with Elena became more frequent after that. She had an uncanny ability to appear whenever I was coming or going, always ready with a warm smile and a casual question. How was work? Was I feeling overwhelmed lately? Had Marcus and I talked about starting a family? "It's just that some men his age start to feel restless," she said one afternoon as we stood by the mailboxes. "Especially when they're not sure if their partner shares their vision for the future." What do you mean? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. Oh, nothing specific. Just that Marcus mentioned feeling like he might be ready for the next chapter, and he wasn't sure if you were on the same timeline. Elena's voice was gentle, concerned. These things are so delicate, aren't they? Communication is everything in a marriage. But Marcus and I had never discussed timelines or next chapters. At least, not with any urgency. We'd always assumed we had time to figure things out together. When did he tell you this? I asked. Elena's expression became slightly evasive. Oh, you know how these conversations happen. A little here, a little there. I hope I haven't overstepped by mentioning it. I just thought, well, sometimes it's easier to confide in someone who's not emotionally invested in the outcome. That evening, I tried to bring up the topic with Marcus. Elena mentioned that you've been thinking about our future lately. About next chapters. Marcus looked up from his laptop, confused. Next chapters. She said you'd talked about feeling ready for something new. That you weren't sure if I was on the same timeline. A frown crossed Marcus's face. I never said that. At least, not like that. He closed the laptop. We were talking about goals, generally. Career stuff, mostly. I might have mentioned that I sometimes wonder if we're too settled, if we should be pushing ourselves more. But that wasn't about you specifically. But she made it sound like, Sarah, I think you might be reading too much into casual conversation. Elena's just being friendly. Maybe she misunderstood something I said. But even as Marcus dismissed it, I could see him thinking, reconsidering his words, perhaps wondering if he had inadvertently revealed something about our relationship that he hadn't fully acknowledged to himself. The seeds of doubt, once planted, began to grow. Over the following weeks, Elena's presence in our lives became more pronounced. She was always available when Marcus needed help with yard work. She happened to be outside when he was loading groceries from his car, offering to carry things. She developed a habit of being in her driveway when he left for work, waving goodbye with a coffee mug in her hand. She's very helpful, Marcus said one evening after Elena had assisted him with a broken sprinkler head. And she knows a lot about home maintenance. Her ex-husband was a contractor. She was married? Divorced about 2 years ago. She doesn't like to talk about it much, but I get the impression it was pretty messy. He left her for someone younger. The information felt significant, though I wasn't sure why. Elena had never mentioned an ex-husband to me. That must have been difficult for her, I said. Yeah, I think it was. She's still pretty guarded about relationships in general. Trust issues, you know. But Elena didn't seem guarded with Marcus. If anything, she seemed to seek him out, to create opportunities for their paths to cross. And Marcus, naturally helpful and friendly, responded to her overtures without any apparent awareness of how frequent they were becoming. It was Elena who suggested the dinner party. You should have people over, she said during one of our impromptu fence conversations. This house is perfect for entertaining. You're such a natural hostess. We do have friends over sometimes, I said. But when was the last time you really put effort into it? Something special, where you could show off your cooking skills. Elena's voice carried that familiar weight of gentle suggestion. Marcus was just saying how much he misses having people over. When had Marcus said this? I racked my memory for any recent conversation about entertaining, but came up empty. Maybe for your anniversary, Elena continued. Something intimate but elegant. I could help you plan it. The idea took root despite my reservations. Our anniversary was approaching, and we hadn't done anything special the last few years. Maybe a dinner party would be nice. Maybe it would remind Marcus of all the reasons he'd fallen in love with me. Elena threw herself into the planning with an enthusiasm that should have been flattering but instead felt overwhelming. She had opinions about everything: the guest list, the menu, the table settings, even what I should wear. "You want to look elegant but not like you're trying too hard," she said, fingering the fabric of the dress I'd chosen. "This might be a bit young for you. Do you have anything more sophisticated?" The criticism was delivered so gently, with such apparent concern for my well-being, that I found myself agreeing. Yes, maybe the dress was too youthful. Yes, perhaps the menu was too ambitious. Yes, Elena's suggestions were probably better than my original ideas. But as the party approached, I felt less and less like the hostess and more like Elena's assistant in my own home. The night of the dinner party, everything was perfect. Too perfect. The flowers Elena had helped me choose were arranged with professional precision. The table setting looked like it belonged in a magazine. The meal, based entirely on Elena's menu suggestions, was sophisticated and complex. Our guests, two couples from Marcus's work, were impressed. They complimented everything, from the ambience to the food to my apparent natural talent for entertaining. "Sarah's outdone herself," Marcus said, beaming with pride. "Though she had some excellent advice from our neighbor, Elena." Elena, who had positioned herself as a guest rather than a helper once people arrived, smiled modestly. "Sarah's the one with the real talent. I just offered a few suggestions." Throughout the evening, I watched Elena work the room with quiet efficiency. She asked thoughtful questions about Marcus's job, remembered details from previous conversations, offered insights that made the other guests nod approvingly. She was charming, intelligent, and sophisticated in a way that made my own contributions to the conversation feel clumsy and superficial. When one of the wives complimented my cooking, Elena was quick to add context. "Sarah's been working so hard on this meal. She's been stressed about getting everything perfect." She smiled warmly at me. I kept telling her to relax, that Marcus would be proud of her no matter what. But you know how we women can be about these things. The comment painted me as anxious and insecure, desperate for approval. Even though it was delivered with apparent affection, it changed how the other guests looked at me for the rest of the evening. Later, as I was clearing dishes in the kitchen, one of the wives joined me. "That Elena is lovely," she said. "How wonderful to have such a supportive neighbor. Marcus is lucky to have two women looking out for him." Two women looking out for him. As if Elena and I were a team, both invested in Marcus's well-being in the same way. After the guests left, Marcus was effusive in his praise. "That was incredible, Sarah. Everyone had such a good time. Elena was right, you really do have a gift for this." But I felt hollow. The success of the evening belonged more to Elena than to me. Even my husband's praise was filtered through her influence. "I'm glad you enjoyed it," I said, loading the dishwasher with mechanical precision. Marcus studied my face. "You seem upset. What's wrong?" How could I explain that I felt like a stranger in my own home? That the woman next door seemed to understand my husband better than I did? That every conversation with Elena left me feeling smaller, less adequate, less worthy of the life I thought I'd built? "I'm just tired," I said. But I wasn't just tired. I was disappearing, piece by piece, comment by comment, suggestion by suggestion. Elena wasn't destroying my marriage with dramatic gestures or obvious interference. She was doing it with kindness, with concern, with gentle observations that made Marcus question whether I was truly happy, whether I was truly the right partner for his evolving needs. The morning after the party, I found Elena in her backyard, tending to roses that had appeared overnight, as if she'd planted them in the darkness. "Wonderful evening," she called over the fence. "You should be very proud. Thank you for your help with everything." Elena straightened, fixing me with that intense stare I'd never gotten used to. "It was my pleasure. Marcus deserves to have beautiful things in his life. He deserves to be appreciated." The implication hung in the air between us. Marcus deserved to be appreciated by someone who understood his worth, someone who could create beautiful evenings without anxiety or stress, someone who didn't need so much guidance and support. "I appreciate Marcus very much," I said quietly. "I'm sure you do." Elena's smile was gentle, understanding, and absolutely merciless. "In your own way." That afternoon, I found Marcus in his study, staring out the window at Elena's yard. She was there, of course, reading a book in the dappled sunlight, looking serene and self-contained in a way I never felt anymore. "She's remarkable, isn't she?" Marcus said without turning around. "Elena. The way she put her life back together after her divorce. Started over completely, bought this house, created this beautiful space for herself. She's very self-sufficient." Self-sufficient. The word echoed in my mind as I watched my husband watch our neighbor. Elena had never appeared needy or anxious. She never required guidance or reassurance. She simply existed, confidently and completely, offering help rather than asking for it. "Marcus," I said carefully, "do you sometimes wish I were more self-sufficient?" He turned to look at me, surprise flickering across his face. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. Lately I feel like I'm always asking for your opinion about things, or needing help with decisions. Maybe I'm too." I searched for the word that would encompass all my growing insecurities. "Dependent." Marcus crossed the room and put his hands on my shoulders. "Sarah, you're not dependent. We're partners. Partners consult each other." But even as he said it, I could see him thinking, perhaps reconsidering moments when I'd asked his advice about decorating choices or social situations. Perhaps wondering if those moments revealed something about my character that he hadn't fully recognized before. "Elena mentioned that some people grow in different directions," I said. "That sometimes couples discover they want different things." Marcus's hands stilled on my shoulders. "When did she say that?" "A few weeks ago. She said you'd talked about feeling ready for a next chapter, and that you weren't sure if I was on the same timeline." A long pause stretched between us. Marcus stepped back slightly. "I think there might be some wires crossed here," he said finally. "Elena and I have had casual conversations about life in general, but nothing about you specifically. Nothing about our relationship being out of sync. But she seemed so certain." "Sarah." Marcus's voice carried a note of patience that I'd never heard before, the tone someone uses when explaining something to a child. "Elena is a nice woman, but she doesn't know us as a couple. She doesn't know what we want or need from each other. You can't let casual comments from a neighbor make you question our entire relationship." But that patient tone did more to shake my confidence than any of Elena's gentle observations. Marcus was managing me now, soothing my irrational fears, taking care of my emotional needs in a way that must have felt burdensome. That evening, I stood at my kitchen window, watching Elena in her garden. She looked up as if she'd sensed my gaze and raised her hand in that familiar wave. But this time, her smile carried something different. Something that looked almost like victory. I understood then that Elena hadn't come to our neighborhood by accident. She hadn't chosen the house next door because of its charm or location. She had chosen it because of us. Because of Marcus. A divorced woman with trust issues doesn't usually seek out the company of married men unless she's looking for something specific. Elena wasn't just being friendly. She was conducting a careful campaign, designed to make Marcus see me as I really was. Needy, insecure, dependent, ordinary. And it was working. The phone calls started the next week. Marcus would step outside to take them, walking to the far end of our yard where I couldn't hear the conversation. When I asked who had called, he'd mention work colleagues or old friends, but something about his manner suggested otherwise. One evening, I watched from the upstairs window as Marcus stood by our back fence, talking animatedly to someone on the phone while looking directly at Elena's house. She was visible through her kitchen window, also on the phone, also looking in his direction. The next morning, Elena appeared at my side as I was loading groceries into my car. "Is everything all right, dear?" she asked, her voice soft with concern. "You look tired." "I'm fine. It's just that Marcus mentioned you've been having trouble sleeping. He's worried about you." When had Marcus discussed my sleep patterns with Elena? How many of our private moments had become topics of conversation between them? "Sarah," Elena continued, moving closer, "I hope you know that you can talk to me about anything. Sometimes it helps to have a woman's perspective on things." "What kind of things?" Elena's smile was gentle, understanding. "Oh, you know. Marriage is complicated. Sometimes we think we're giving our husbands what they need, when really we're just trying too hard. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do is step back and let them find what they're really looking for." The words hit me like a physical blow. Elena wasn't just undermining my marriage anymore. She was giving me permission to end it. "I think you should know," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "that Marcus and I are very happy together. Whatever conversations you think you've been having with him, whatever impressions you've gotten about our relationship, you're wrong." Elena's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. "Of course you're happy, dear. I never suggested otherwise. I just want you to know that if circumstances change, if you ever find that you and Marcus want different things from life, you shouldn't feel like you have to hold on to something that isn't working anymore." She patted my arm gently, like she was comforting me about an inevitable loss. "After all," she continued, "the worst thing we can do to someone we love is make them feel trapped." That night, I confronted Marcus directly. "Are you having an affair with Elena?" Marcus looked up from his laptop, genuinely shocked. "What? Sarah, no. Of course not. But you talk to her. You call her. You discuss our private life with her." "I don't discuss our private life. We're neighbors. We have casual conversations." Marcus closed the laptop and turned to face me fully. "Where is this coming from?" "She knows things, Marcus. Things about how I've been sleeping, about my being stressed, about you feeling ready for a next chapter. She knows details about our relationship that she shouldn't know unless you're telling her." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Okay, maybe I have mentioned some things in passing. But not in the way you're suggesting. Elena's easy to talk to, and sometimes, I don't know, sometimes it's nice to have perspective from someone who's not emotionally involved." "Perspective on what?" Another pause. "On whether I'm handling things right. Whether I'm being supportive enough when you're going through difficult periods." The admission felt like betrayal. Marcus had been discussing how to manage me with another woman. Elena had positioned herself as his advisor, his consultant on the care and feeding of his problematic wife. "So you do think there's something wrong with me?" I said. "No, Sarah. I think you've been struggling lately, and I've been trying to be a good husband by getting advice on how to help you. But struggling with what? I thought about the past few months, trying to identify the difficulties Marcus was referring to. The only struggles I could remember were the ones that had started after Elena moved in next door. What if she's the problem? I asked. What if I wasn't struggling until she started pointing out everything that was wrong with me? Marcus's expression shifted to something between frustration and pity. Elena hasn't pointed out anything wrong with you. She's actually been very complimentary. She thinks you're talented and caring and devoted. But nothing. There's no but. Except there was. I could see it in his eyes, hear it in his voice. Elena thought I was talented and caring and devoted, but also anxious and dependent, and perhaps not quite what Marcus needed for his next chapter. Marcus, I said carefully, do you want our marriage to end? The question hung in the air between us. Marcus looked stricken, but he didn't answer immediately, and that pause told me everything I needed to know. Of course I don't want our marriage to end, he said finally. Sarah, you're everything to me. But lately, you seem so unhappy, so convinced that everyone is against you. Maybe we should talk to someone. A counselor. A counselor. Someone else to analyze my behavior, to identify my flaws, to help Marcus understand why his wife had become so difficult. What if I told you that I think Elena moved here specifically to destroy our marriage? I said. Marcus stared at me. I would say that sounds like paranoia. What if I told you that every conversation I've had with her has been designed to make me feel inadequate? That she's been systematically undermining my confidence while positioning herself as your advisor and confidant? Sarah, you're talking about a neighbor who brought us cookies and helped you plan a dinner party. This isn't a movie. People don't orchestrate elaborate plots to steal other people's husbands. But even as he said it, I could see him thinking about Elena's helpfulness, her availability, her easy confidence. He was comparing us, perhaps unconsciously, and finding me lacking. The next morning, I made a decision. I called in sick to work and spent the day researching Elena Voss. If she had moved here with specific intent, there would be traces, patterns, evidence of previous behavior. What I found chilled me. Elena had lived in 4 different cities over the past 5 years. In each location, she had rented or purchased homes in established neighborhoods where she was the only single woman among married couples. In each location, she had stayed for approximately 18 months before moving on. More disturbing, in 2 of the cities, I found local news articles about divorces that had made headlines due to their contentious nature. In both cases, the women had accused their husbands of having affairs with neighbors, accusations that were eventually dropped due to lack of evidence. Elena Voss was a predator, but a sophisticated one. She didn't steal husbands through obvious seduction. She stole them by making their wives feel inadequate, by positioning herself as the understanding friend, the wise counselor, the woman who could offer what the wife couldn't. When Marcus came home that evening, I showed him what I'd found. Look at the pattern, I said, spreading printouts across the dining room table. 4 different cities, 4 different neighborhoods. She targets stable couples and creates instability. Marcus examined the papers, his expression growing more concerned with each page. But his concern wasn't directed at Elena. Sarah, this is stalking behavior. You've spent an entire day researching our neighbor's personal history. This isn't normal. What's not normal is a woman who moves from city to city, inserting herself into other people's marriages. Or maybe she's someone who's had a difficult divorce and is trying to rebuild her life. Maybe she's moved around because she's looking for the right place to settle down. Marcus sat heavily in his chair. Sarah, I think you need to talk to someone. This level of suspicion, this obsession with Elena, it's not healthy. She's the one who's obsessed. With you. With us. With destroying what we have. Why would she want to destroy what we have? The question stopped me cold, because I realized I didn't have a rational answer. What could Elena possibly gain from ending our marriage? Marcus was attractive and successful, but he wasn't wealthy. He wasn't famous. There was nothing about our life that would make it worth an elaborate campaign to possess. Unless the campaign itself was the point. Unless Elena was someone who derived satisfaction from the process of destruction, from proving that she could take what belonged to other women. I don't know why, I admitted. But I know what I've experienced. I know that every conversation with her has left me feeling smaller and less adequate. I know that she's created intimacy with you while making me doubt myself. I know that our marriage was fine before she moved in next door. Marcus reached across the table and took my hand. Our marriage is still fine. But Sarah, you have to see how this looks. You're creating elaborate theories about a woman who's been nothing but kind to us. You're researching her personal history like a private investigator. You're asking me if I want our marriage to end. Because she planted that question. Or because you're looking for problems where none exist. We stared at each other across the table, and I realized that Elena had already won. She had made me appear unstable, paranoid, obsessive. She had positioned herself as the rational, supportive presence while painting me as the problematic wife who needed to be managed. Even if Marcus never had a physical affair with Elena, she had already achieved her goal. She had made me the enemy of my own marriage. That night, I lay awake listening to Marcus sleep and wondering what Elena was doing next door. Was she also lying awake, planning her next move? Was she satisfied with the progress she'd made, or was there more work to be done? In the morning, I would apologize to Marcus for my behavior. I would promise to stop researching Elena, stop questioning their friendship, stop seeing threats where none existed. I would try to be the wife I used to be, before Elena's gentle observations had made me doubt every instinct, every choice, every aspect of my own character. But as I lay there in the darkness, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was already too late. Elena hadn't just moved next door to steal my husband. She had moved next door to steal my life, piece by piece, conversation by conversation, until I no longer recognized the woman I used to be. And the most terrifying part was that she was succeeding with kindness, with concern, with the appearance of genuine care for both Marcus and me. She was destroying my marriage while making it look like I was destroying it myself. In the morning, I would smile and apologize and try to be normal. But I would also be watching, waiting, looking for the moment when Elena's mask would slip and reveal the predator underneath. Because I knew, with a certainty that ran deeper than rational thought, that Elena Voss had not moved next door by accident. And I knew that she would not stop until she had taken everything that mattered to me. The only question was whether I could prove it before she succeeded, or whether, in trying to prove it, I would complete her work for her.